wrestlers. Let's talk about women's wrestling. This is March. This is Women's History Month. If you guys have been following us on social media, we've been highlighting some of our favorite wrestlers on social media. We got Beth Phoenix, we got AJ Lee, we got Jazz, we got Bull Nakano, and that was actually pretty serendipitous because I was not posting it because she got announced that same day to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that was just some pretty good predictions. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about women's wrestling in general, where we are now, where we've been, who our favorite female wrestlers are, iconic matches, that kind of stuff. I think it's apropos to just start with just favorite female wrestlers that come to mind when you think of, the best or the most memorable female wrestlers. I will open the floor up and I'll let you guys start the conversation because I feel like I've just been yapping along. Who comes to mind when it's for you in your mind when it comes to great women's wrestling and memorable women wrestlers?
I got a top three. It goes
Shoot.
China, Lita, and Natty Neidhart.
Oh, there you go. I wasn't expecting you saying Natty, but that's a good one. How are you, David?
I think of like China, or I also think of like in more current times, like Mercedes Monet. Like I'd probably give it to her in terms of like a favorite.
I mean, especially like the past, was it? Let's say since 2014, I feel like that's when the women's revolution really started. So it's basically been a decade where it just like, at least for women's wrestling in WWE, because it sometimes just feels like it's the center of the wrestling universe. But yeah, let's talk about specifically WWE's wrestling. Yeah, they are super integral when it comes to, if you're thinking about the best, like there's so many that are front ended in these last 10 years that you can say are like the best women's wrestlers ever. Because they had that opportunity, like there were plenty of women who were within that like ruthless aggression era, PG era, whatever you want to call it, between 2002 and let's say like 2012, because it was still kind of like a tweener kind of thing. It was sprouting here and there. You had like people again like Beth Phoenix, who basically had no competition.
Yeah.
No competition, when it came to in-ring skills. And again, it's not necessarily the fault of the women in that ring or in that company. Like people like Kelly or Candice Michelle, and again, Michelle McCool, Leia, they were actually pretty good. But again, like folks like Alicia Fox or even the Bella Twins, and they got better. But it's through no fault of their own because WWE as a company and a culture just didn't see it as profitable, and they just didn't think the audience was into it. So they never really gave them too much time of day.
I mean, you look at somebody like China. I mean, she had to wrestle men. She had to
exactly, but she was so dominant. You wouldn't like have her just do, pudding matches or brawn panties. They must have put her in one or two, right? China, or did they never put her in brawn panties matches?
Yeah. I don't think so.
She was a centerfold for Playboy.
She did do Playboy.
Yeah.
But she said she wanted to be, tough, smart, sexy, and beautiful. And I feel like she was definitely like the encapsulation of like what a ideal women's wrestler looks like. And again, yeah, I would like to see that again. Having like intergender matches like China did, face Chris Jericho. It was Jericho versus for the IC title, right?
Jeff Jarrett.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then later, after she basically plowed through the entire roster, she didn't really have too much going. I don't know how she felt about the storyline with Eddie Guerrero, where she was just kind of like the mamacita and she had like the roses and all that stuff. I wasn't sure how she felt about that, but she only won the women's title once because the women's again, the women's title at that time, you had people like Sable and Kat and Deborah. You had Jazz and Jacqueline, and they were really good and athletic. And we had Jazz on our social media, but yeah, she basically had no competition. So the only people that can potentially kick her ass are like the cruiserweights and the guys.
She was in the Rumble, yeah.
Yeah, she was in the Rumble. She was number 30.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing. Well, now that they have a women's rumble, I guess they wouldn't put a woman in the men's rumble. But I honestly, I'd
think they
say
did
fuck
Nia
it. Why
Jax.
not? What was that?
I think they did Nia Jax one year.
I think they did. I know they did Beth Phoenix, actually. I think they did Beth Phoenix because she eliminated the Great Khali, if I'm not mistaken. So they've done that once or twice
Nia
before.
Jax got RKO'd.
But was that before they had a women's Royal Rumble match?
I don't think so. I think that was, yeah, no, that was definitely women's Rumbles were going on.
Well, I mean, people on TikTok or social media, you can correct us whenever this clip comes out, but let us know we're wrong. But yeah, it only happened a handful of times. So yeah, China was second to none. Rhea Ripley is, a lot of people compare her to, like this era's China, but she is her own person, but she does give off this aura that, you haven't had in a long time. I'll argue that Beth Phoenix was that kind of person during her era, but yeah, Rhea Ripley is in her own stratosphere, I think, when it comes to women's wrestling, superstars in general, not even just specific women's wrestling, but just superstars. So for me, favorite female wrestlers, I'll put Mickey James up at the top. I do. I mean, I keep talking about her, but I really do like Mickey James as a wrestler, as a person. I think she's great, and I hope she has one last run, kind of like what they did with Trish Stratus and Lita, because I felt like a lot of the women got their redemption in this women's revolution by participate. They had like the women's evolution PLE, so they had opportunities there. They debuted or they showed up at women's Royal Rumbles. So I'm glad a lot of these women who were very talented and didn't get too much exposure during their time had that opportunity. So yeah, Mickey James, the first time I saw her was WrestleMania 22 when she faced Trish Stratus for the WWE Women's Championship. And that's kind of when, again, I started again. So she was also fairly new. She was there in 2005. Was she in 2004?
There like a year before.
Yeah. So she had like that. She was first kind of like a fan, I think. And then she became very obsessed with Trish Stratus. And they had that whole, I mean, that was also part of the Raw intro was that Christmas, I think it was a mistletoe, and she made out with Trish Stratus. They had that in the Raw intro for a bit. But yeah, she had the WWE Women's Championship match against Trish Stratus, and she got in trouble because she like basically pretended she was like kind of fingering herself, and then she like did the V thing. Or no, she did this. And then she was in her like the psycho crazy Mickey James stick, which I still think was like her best gimmick ever. She just did it so well. But she was also really good in the ring. She was really good in the ring. And then she slowly evolved. Her attire changed and all that. And her theme song is infectious. Arthur will remind you. Our friend Arthur likes Mickey James. So Mickey James is definitely at the top. You didn't mention Trish Stratus, but I have to mention Trish Stratus at the top. I know she's kind of like the obvious choice, but I feel like she's obvious for a reason because she was good and she did do all of those things and was the most fully fleshed out during that ruthless aggression era when it was still, bra and panties and bathroom breaks and all that kind of stuff. She was one of those that actually, stuck out.
I mean, Lita and Trish were those like prototype kind of like modern day women's wrestlers. You know what I mean? At least some of them. So
first, the headline of Raw.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the other thing. They knew that they were so popular that they gave them the ability or the opportunity to headline a Monday Night Raw, which just sounds crazy now that we're like, oh, that they had women main event Raw. Like how how benevolent of them, but now it's just, par for the course. I want to mention also Stephanie McMahon, as she is obviously, part of the corporate side of WWE, but as an on-screen character, she was also just really good, and I can't ignore, her
Mick who?
Stephanie McMahon.
Who? No, I'm just kidding.
Helmsley, like the whole Stephanie McMahon Helmsley era, and I just realized like her SMH shirt is just like shaking my head if you're watching it now in 2024. But that whole McMahon Helmsley era thing where she was just with the title with Triple H, and she was that chicken shit kind of heel, and she was feuding with Lita, like that was thoroughly entertained when that happened. And her iterations with other things with the Authority and all that kind of stuff, I thought, again, a highlight. And she just sounded like a genuinely good person to people behind the scenes, and they were upset when she left. But I would definitely put her up there. Yeah, so we talked about the favorite female wrestlers. Are there any matches that kind of come to mind for you guys that stick out in terms of, oh, wow, that was a really good match? I know I brought up WrestleMania 22 versus Trish and Mickey James, but I don't know if you guys had. It could be anything from this past year, from the past 15 or 20, anything that sticks to your guys' minds.
Yeah, a lot of the Mania matches that they've been able to put in the last couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even like the Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch.
That was a good match.
Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks.
Yeah, I mean, like the quality of matches has increased for sure. Because I mean, again, they've been given those opportunities, and I just want to mention Natalya again because I mean, she's been wrestling with the company for like 15 plus years at this point, and she's still on the roster and doing matches like
That's
crazy.
almost 20 at this point.
She apparently, when I was looking some of her info up, she apparently broke some Guinness World Records for female wrestlers, most PPV appearances, most matches, most wins, among a couple other things. So I mean, she's obviously a workhorse, and I think she's pretty underappreciated as far as women's wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I feel like even when she like won the title, I don't even think she won that many. I felt like it was still it still didn't feel like she was treated as like a main eventer, but perhaps her role was like that support and just being that constant, that you can put someone up against, in matches. And you're right with Natty. Like I remember when we were watching and we started rewatching everything, and I was super into reading about Bret Hart and the whole Shawn Michaels thing. I was like really into just reading up about the Attitude Era, the new generation. And after Bret Hart got inducted into the Hall of Fame at WrestleMania 22, just the conversations about is Bret Hart going to come back, and then they had like Natty Neidhart debut, and I thought they were going to do this whole thing with Bret Hart. That didn't manifest until 3 years later, I think, because he came back in 2010. But yeah, just the whole Hart Foundation stuff I really enjoyed. I also feel like that wasn't used to its full potential, again, because of just the state of the women's division at the time. I feel like you could do more with it, but
Divas of Doom, it was her and freaking Beth Phoenix. Yep.
Beth Phoenix, yeah.
And they didn't have tag team championships then at that point, did they? They just like kind of stuck them together.
Yeah, I mean they only had the women's or the Divas championship, basically.
Right. Which she had the Divas championship, and then she also captured the SmackDown Women's Championship, and she had both for a second.
Yeah. Which is you can't not everyone can say that. The same thing with was it Jacqueline or Jazz? Who there? I don't remember which one it was, but
Jizz.
No, but they held the WWF championship, and they were basically the last WWF champion and the first WWE champion. because they were
Jazz.
holding the title during the transition. I think it was Jazz.
I wanted to say.
But yeah, that Natty is a good one. Beth Phoenix, again, another one that I feel like deserves to be at the top. And again, big fish in a small pond. Just her ability to, her ability was not appreciated. I feel like, well, I guess in a sense it was, because they basically just put her in a bunch of squash matches, and she was basically no one's competition for a while. She's another one that deserved a lot, and I think near the end of her run, that the reason she left was because she did not feel appreciated at the time, and she left falling short, I think, of before the women's revolution era, that they like to call it that. I remember, I think Beth Phoenix re-debuted not too long. It was actually at No Mercy. She won the title. I think it was off Candice Michelle. We were at that pay-per-view, if you remember, Chris, because that was the night they had Triple H go for the title 3 times in one night against 3 different people, and they had the Punjabi prison match. So I remember that. But I also remember
Bautista.
Beth Phoenix. Yeah, Bautista. So yeah, definitely for iconic matches. I mean, I gotta again mention the Trish Stratus one, and you like you guys said, there weren't that many opportunities before that, or even a little before the women's revolution to have super highlights. I mean, you mentioned the Raw main event between Trish Stratus and Lita. That was very good. I mean, also
Like
Lita looked like she
2001.
almost broke her damn neck. Her neck
Yeah.
went back as she was flipping forward.
I think she
That
did
was
like break or like fracture one of her cervical discs. I don't know if it was during that or if it was. I was reading it earlier, but she definitely did, and she took time off.
yeah. So
But
what about
I was just gonna say, because what were women in wrestling in like the 80s and like early 90s? Essentially, they were just valets and just eye candy for the most part. I mean, and obviously through the 90s, except for the exceptions of like China and the like. So I feel like they've come a long way as far
Mhm.
as viability and people wanting to see the match. Everybody makes the joke, oh, here's the bathroom break match, but I think that's been less and less of a talking point in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, you have, to be fair, you also had folks like Wendy Richter, Rockin' Robin. No one really mentions or remembers Rockin' Robin during the late '80s or early '90s, but they, I mean, again, like Wendy Richter at the time was basically not, I will say, almost as popular as Hulk Hogan, because she was also everywhere and part of that rock and wrestling connection. She was in the cartoon shows, and she eventually she was the original screw job, because she had issues with her, it was pay and pop, and just the way that she was treated, and they basically had the fabulous moolah. I think she wore like a spider outfit. I forgot what they call it, but basically she got the first screw job. And
Trust
when
Earl.
yeah, she did. She should have trusted Earl.
Who took the power bomb into the table? Who was that? From the
I feel like it
Dudleys?
was. I mean, it
That
was
was Mae
like,
Young.
Mae Young, okay.
but Moolah probably did too. So I felt like they just kind of like changed. One did it this time, the other one did the other time.
That's insane.
I mean, let's kind of like we talked about. Let's kind of like talk about like that specific era, because that's kind of crazy how much they were involved in the Attitude Era. Because Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young, I mean, you tell them, I want you to go through a table. I want you to strip down to your bra and panties and just show your boobs or whatever. Like, that was crazy.
Jerry Springer, baby.
Oh my God. That was basically Jerry Springer
Gave birth
stuff.
to a hand.
Oh
Gave
yeah.
birth to a hand. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about moments. That was a moment. Who was throwing up? What was it? Oh, was it Mark Henry who was throwing up? I forgot.
Yeah, I think it's Mark
but
Henry.
yeah, like that duo between like 97, 98, and like I mean even through like the mid 2000s up until like they passed away, they would still make um appearances.
Like,
Memorable. I mean, they are memorable and also very well known, historic, long tenured women's champion, fabulous Moolah. She had her, damn face on the belt because she had it for so long.
can we just backtrack to this like damn near 80-year-old woman being fucking power bombed from like essentially from like a rafter just down, and it's like your grandma getting fucking power bombed, and then you got fucking Bubba Ray rolling his fucking eyes back and shit.
Pure
Like,
ecstasy.
did she sustain any injury after that? Because
No,
like,
she said she
goddamn,
was fine.
that's
I think
wild.
I think Bubba Ray said that she like tapped his wrist to let him know that she was okay because he thought he might have like killed her after that.
That shit is
But
crazy, man.
man, so when you're Chris, when you're working out those older ladies, you gotta say like I don't want to hear no excuses. Mae Young got power bombed through a table, 20 feet in the air.
I mean, I tell any female client that I'll have, I'll tell them like you're not fragile, you're not made of glass. Like you can do a lot. You know what I mean? Like you might even take a power bomb when you're 70 something. You know what I mean? And get
Maybe.
up.
And get up, and be okay.
Yeah.
There was one person that I wanted to bring up that didn't get enough exposure, and she was super influential and legendary in TNA was Gail Kim. And Gail Kim debuted and won her title in her debut in WWE, and then didn't stay too long because they basically said that they were going in a different direction. Although I thought that they were basically already in that direction with the brawn panties and the Jello matches and all that stuff. But yeah, super short tenure. Went to TNA, came back in 2008 for a brief stint, and yeah, then again didn't take advantage of Gail Kim really at all. And I feel like there was so much uh, untapped potential with Gail Kim in WWE. But do you guys remember Gail Kim's run at all? Did you guys watch any of her stuff in TNA
I mean, I
as
do
Knockouts
remember.
champion?
Yes.
I remember looking her up when she debuted because I remember seeing her in TNA, but just like not watching the product. But then she debuted, and then I was like, oh shit. What about
Yeah, I mean
Victoria?
Victoria. I mean Victoria is another one. There's so many of them that again didn't should have gotten more of a spotlight. Victoria was another big one. She also, Chris, you remember this when she had a restaurant in Chicago with her, I guess now ex-husband.
Mhm.
They had a wrestling
Caught cheating.
themed. What was it? Do you remember what it was called?
Squared circle.
Squared. I think it was called Squared Circle. Yeah, and they honestly had really good burgers, and they had pizza wontons, which I never heard of before. But when I tried them, I was like, damn, this shit's really good.
Mac and cheese, fire.
Yeah, and they would watch they would stream wrestling pay-per-views and stuff. So I was honestly really upset when they closed down. And again, it sucks because I'm sure the other partial reason was because she did have issues with her ex-husband, so that affects business and all that, and that just kind of spirals down from there. David, did you hear of Squared Circle?
I heard of it. I never went.
Yeah, I think it was like in that DePaul area. I forgot what it was called, but
Wicker Park or whatever.
yeah, something like. I mean, it was like basically like the CM Punk area. I don't know. But yeah, that was a really fun place. We have a picture with Victoria, and I mean it was with Arlene too, so it must have been like 2014 or 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll share that picture for Women's History Month this week. But yeah, Victoria. You know what? I'll that's gonna be my next post. It'll be that post with that picture, and there's our gallery post for the week.
Go ahead, correct us, Marks.
Correct us, Marks. But yeah, Victoria is another one. I mean, the Black Widow. Her fucking theme song was a banger. and
She
just
had
her
Nicki
in-ring skill
Minaj
was really
before
good.
Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, she was really good in the ring, and again, underutilized in WWE. And I'm glad she got her opportunity at the Royal Rumble. I think it was during the pandemic, though. She
She's
wasn't
another
doing
one
much
that went to
promoting.
TNA and did all right. I
Yeah,
believe, yeah.
yeah. There's a whole slew of matches from TNA that I think we should just watch. Like people with Mickey James, with Victoria, with Gail Kim. Like they had some bangers there.
Burke
Uh,
Angle.
Burke Angle.
DMD.
DMD, Britt Baker. I mean, what did you guys feel of Britt Baker's presence in AEW? How much of an influence do you feel like she had on the women's division, or an impact, I guess?
Massive, I would say. Like she was essentially the face of it for a bit.
Yeah. Does all the public stuff.
Yep. I mean, even now, like if you're on her social media, she's out and about doing some stuff, you know,
What
singing
about
songs and shit.
so yeah? What do you think is her trajectory? Like, what do you think her future is in AEW? Do you feel like she's going to get an opportunity to be that, face of the women's division again? Do you think maybe they're just waiting for Mercedes Moné to just kind of like spark a fire in that? Because I don't know what's preventing them from having her on screen, because she's not injured, allegedly. She said she's available unless that was a work, but nothing came from it. I don't know if you guys remember that tweet she had on X saying that she's available, but I'm not getting any screen time. I only had a minute and 15 seconds or whatever it was of screen time last year.
I mean,
She made
it
that comment.
might be the Mercedes thing. I mean, maybe they wouldn't debut both in the same night, but you know, that could be a feud. Something to do with like the state of the women's AEW roster or whatever, and then she comes out and it's a back and forth or some shit.
Yeah. Well, as we slowly wrap up, let's talk about just the future of the women's division in AEW and WWE, and where do you think it's headed? Um, starting with, let's start with AEW first. We have Big Business, and maybe by the time this is, out, Big Business already happened, but what do you guys think the future of women's wrestling in AEW looks like? You could just, whatever it comes to mind, whatever you think that future involves or doesn't involve.
It's in the right direction. It's gonna start being more like a WWE thing.
Yeah, I mean,
As in like their production will catch up to WWE's, and because WWE's been able to knock it out.
yeah, I mean, they got the talent. I mean,
Yeah.
they got Statlander and all them. Willow Nightingale, great talent.
Yeah.
Big,
Deebs.
yeah. I mean, they got a big roster, and and honestly, the catalyst might be Mercedes Moné. I think that like her showing up could probably drive the women's division up for them, up in a way.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's getting more into AEW, I really hope that that is a layer that just really explodes, and they expand upon their existing roster, because he has so many women wrestlers that he's signed on, and there are people who are on Ring of Honor. I feel like personally, I would just sell off Ring of Honor, dump all the Ring of Honor titles, don't have them show up on AEW, because for me, the NXT titles, like there, it does feel like development, but Ring of Honor they treat as an alternative brand. So again, it feels like it dilutes the product, and they have a lot of like Athena for one, like a lot of good wrestlers, women, men included, on there that I feel like you could just put them on Collision and Dynamite. You have Rampage, you have 3 shows, just utilize them better. And I feel like there's so much potential for all these women that they have on their roster currently. You didn't necessarily need a Mercedes, but perhaps maybe you do. Maybe they need that shot in the arm to start the ball and let it roll, let it keep going. Build momentum. with WWE, where do you guys feel like the future of their division is? Who do you feel like the top face of the company is going to be within the next few years? Do you think the one thing Bailey?
Oh yeah.
I feel like Bailey's kind of, well, maybe she hasn't been the face. I mean, she was kind of like the big heel during the pandemic era. And she was super popular when she debuted. You know, she was in NXT. She had the whole hugger gimmick. She came to the main roster. That translated really well. But I do feel like she needs like that. She hasn't gotten that treatment like Becky Lynch or Sasha Banks. She didn't get her WrestleMania moment
Philly.
like they did.
She'll get it in Philly.
I hope so.
That's
I
true.
hope. Honestly, like I know that The Rock, that tag team match, I feel like they probably will main event WrestleMania. But honestly, I think they should just open with that one. Just swerve folks and just open with the tag team match and let Bailey have the main event of night one. I feel like that should be fair. But we'll see. I'm gonna go with they're probably gonna just have Cody and that story main event both nights. But I think Bailey deserves it.
As far as new blood, though, probably Tiffany Stratton. She's probably up there.
Yeah. She's got that aura. I don't watch NXT too much. I've seen clips here and there, but when she debuted, when she was in the Elimination Chamber and on those SmackDown matches, her interactions with other women on the roster, that is she does have that X factor. You can't put it. You can't exactly pin what it is, but she's really good. Super athlete. I mean, bodybuilder, crazy bodybuilder. Like if you've seen some of her pictures and stuff, man, those lats are nuts.
Photoshop? No, I'm just kidding.
No, they're not Photoshop. And I just saw like her interaction with like this little girl fan. Like she just seems like a genuinely nice person. So I definitely see her, hitting the stratosphere. Jade Cargill is another one that we didn't mention, but I mean, there's just so many good women wrestlers you kind of forget. But Jade Cargill is another one that I think is going to be like John Cena, Bianca Belair level, star.
Rhea Ripley still got a while to be on
Rhea
top.
Ripley, I mean, yeah, she's on top of it. I think she's gonna go even farther and be like next level. Like she is already a big star, but I think she'll be like John Cena, Rock levels if they utilize her correctly. But yeah, with one thing for the women's division in WWE, with the future of the women's division, I'm glad they have tag titles and they have the women's championships. I think maybe they need some kind of mid-card title, like an
TBS.
Yeah, like a TBS, whatever, the USA Network or the Netflix Championship. I think they need some kind of mid-tier title. Because, I mean, like, again, just from the roster and just based on the logic of like, well, the men's roster has an Intercontinental and a US Championship. I don't see why the women don't get a mid-tier title. I feel like they maybe tried it with the 24/7 championship, but that was like everybody, and that's not, I don't want a comedy title. I want something that gives it more gravitas. So maybe there's a title that used to exist and they could bring back, but I'd like to see a mid-tier title for someone who can be called a worker or on their way to becoming, the next Trish Stratus or Lita.
European Championship.
I mean, something. I feel like that roster should get that belt, and it's not diluting anything because I feel like that'd be the right number of belts, but yeah, I hope that's what I see in the future for WWE's women's wrestling. But with that wraps up episode 5 of the Chi-Town Shoot podcast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, rate us, and leave your feedback. Tune in next time for more wrestling madness. Until then, keep marking out.